There's an enigmatic resilience in those rare individuals who remain steadfast no matter what tempests life conjures against them. The world unleashes its full arsenal. People lash out with cutting words, carefully constructed plans dissolve into chaos, setbacks crash down like waves in a storm, one after another, unyielding in their rhythm. Yet these souls stand unmoved, their calm an impenetrable fortress, as if the tumult swirling around them is powerless to breach their inner sanctum. What arcane knowledge do they hold that so many of us, caught in the churn of daily existence, seem to miss entirely? Most people navigate life ensnared in a relentless dance of reaction, their emotions tethered to the whims of the external. A car veers too close on the highway, and a flash of rage consumes them. A coworker's sly, passive-aggressive dig slips into the conversation, and suddenly their entire afternoon is cloaked in gloom. A stranger's odd, fleeting glance or offhand remark plants a nagging seed of insecurity that festers for hours, sometimes days. It's as though we're programmed to be marionettes, our strings yanked by every passing breeze, our peace a fragile thing, dangling precariously on the edge of the next disruption. But what if there were a way to cut those strings once and for all? What if no human voice, no twist of circumstance, no force beyond the boundaries of your own being could ever again ripple the stillness you carry within? Carl Jung, the visionary explorer of the human psyche, once offered a piercing insight. Most of us are not prisoners of the world's caprice, but of our own unexamined responses to it. We convince ourselves that the chaos outside is the architect of our distress, tugging at our emotions like a cruel puppeteer, when in truth, it's merely casting light on the shadows we've yet to face within ourselves. Here lies the unshakable foundation of this truth. Nothing, absolutely nothing, can disturb your equilibrium unless it finds a crack, a hidden crevice in your inner world to anchor itself to. If someone hurls an insult your way, perhaps they call you foolish, insignificant, a failure, and you feel your pulse quicken, your chest tighten with indignation or doubt, it's not their words that wield the power. It's the quiet, buried part of you that wonders, even for a fleeting moment, if they've struck a chord of truth. If a loved one's cold indifference leaves you hollow, it's because a fragment of your soul still yearns for their validation to feel complete. This is why two people can stand beneath the same torrential downpour. One emerges soaked but steady, brushing off the deluge with a shrug, while the other is swept away, drowning in their own spiraling thoughts. The rain falls equally. The difference is carved deep within the caverns of the mind. Jung christened this inner realm the shadow, a subterranean labyrinth of the psyche, a murky repository where we stash the pieces of ourselves we'd rather not acknowledge. Our insecurities that whisper we're not enough, our shame over past missteps, the tender, unhealed wounds we cloak in bravado or denial. For most, these stirrings are intruders, unwelcome phantoms to be banished with noise, scrolling screens, blaring music, endless tasks, or smothered beneath layers of distraction. When that fails, they turn outward, pinning their unrest on the world's shoulders. The abrasive neighbor who never smiles, the supervisor who doles out criticism without praise, the relentless string of misfortunes that seem tailor-made to break them. It's a convenient escape, this habit of blaming the external. Far easier to rail against a rude cashier or curse the unfairness of fate than to sit with the discomfort of what's brewing inside. But those who choose a different path, who pause amid the storm and dare to gaze into the mirror of their own reactions, unearth a revelation that shifts the very ground beneath their feet. The world outside is not the source of their turmoil. It's a projection, a vivid screen reflecting the contours of their unconscious mind. Internalize this, let it sink into your bones, and you unlock a power that feels almost otherworldly. The ability to reshape your entire existence, not by wrestling with the chaos beyond your reach, but by taming the wilderness within your own skull. The catch, of course, is that this truth is a jagged pill to swallow. Most would rather clutch tightly to the story that their suffering is the handiwork of a callous ex, a thankless job, a universe that delights in dealing them a bad hand. Anything but the possibility that they're the ones fueling their own captivity. It's a seductive comfort, this victimhood, a soft blanket to wrap around the ego. It's infinitely harder to peel it away and admit that they might be the architects of their own chains, willingly handing over their power with every unchecked reaction. Yet, for those with the temerity to stop the blame game, to turn their eyes inward and sift through the sediment of their soul, layer by layer, shadow by shadow, a liberation dawns that defies description. And the prize is nothing short of transformative. When you cease to react, you cease to be a pawn. You no longer need to tiptoe around volatile tempers, orchestrate every detail of your environment, or armor yourself against life's inevitable arrows. You become, in the truest sense, untouchable. Not in a way that's aloof or mechanical, but in a way that's rooted, resolute, sovereign in its stillness. Not stripped of emotion, but immune to the world's attempts to hijack it. This is the grand illusion of control pitted against the boundless freedom of release. We spend our lives chasing a ghost of mastery over things we were never destined to govern. We thirst for approval from every corner, cling to the fragile hope that life will unfurl according to our meticulously drawn blueprints, ache for every moment to bend to our will like clay in our hands. When it resists, when a stranger's scorn stings, when a cherished dream splinters, when the narrative we've scripted is shredded by reality's indifference, we unravel. We fume at the audacity of disrespect, grieve the sting of betrayal with a heaviness that lingers, internalize every detour as a personal affront, as though the cosmos has singled us out for punishment. It's a draining crusade, this relentless quest to force the world into submission, to demand it conform to our expectations. We exhaust ourselves trying to hold the reins of things that were never ours to steer. Other people's opinions, the ebb and flow of fortune, the unpredictable pulse of time. But here's the raw, unyielding truth. The only realm you'll ever truly reign over is the lens through which you see it all. Jung pierced through the fog with crystalline precision. The external world isn't inherently kind or cruel, bountiful or barren. It's a neutral expanse, a void of meaning, until we breathe life into it. What shapes it, what infuses it with light or shadow, is the filter you carry in your mind. Consider two souls struck by the same blow. A career crumbles, a relationship fractures, a long-held aspiration slips through their fingers like sand. One collapses into a chasm of despair, convinced the earth itself has turned against them, their days swallowed by bitterness and self-pity. The other stands still, surveys the wreckage with a quiet curiosity, and spies a thread of possibility, a lesson, a pivot, a chance to rise anew. The circumstances are identical, the facts unyielding, yet the paths they walk diverge into entirely separate universes. Why? Perception. Jung's admonition cuts to the marrow. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What he's laying bare is both stark and revelatory. As long as you remain oblivious to the silent scripts etched into your depths, your beliefs about your own worth, your terror of being left behind, your rigid ideas of what triumph must look like, you'll stagger through life. A sleepwalker caught in a dream you mistake for reality, convinced the blows are random when they're merely ripples of your own unclaimed currents. Here's where the web grows thick and tangled. The harder you fight to shackle the world outside, the more it tightens its grip on your inner peace. Need someone to affirm your brilliance? You've just tossed them the keys to your joy. Need every chapter of your story to unfold without a hitch? Now the plot holds you hostage. Need existence to deal you a just hand, free of blemish or bias? You're crafting your own disappointment, brick by brick. The more you clutch, the more you're bound. Your happiness a fragile hostage to forces you can't tame. But let go of that frantic, white-knuckled need to dictate, and the entire battlefield transforms. You're free from the gnawing hunger for validation that gnaws at your edges, free from the suffocating dread of what might go awry, free from the soul-wearying struggle to wrestle an untamable world into your ideal shape. Look at those who radiate an unshakable aura. They don't bend the tides of fate to their whims. They've bridled the tides within themselves. They stand like lighthouses amid the crashing waves, unwavering as the tempest rages, steady when the earth trembles beneath their feet, untouched by the clamor of opinions, fearless of the fog that shrouds tomorrow. They've unraveled the great lie. Control is a shimmering mirage, a seductive trap, and the truest power blossoms in the act of letting go. And here's the paradox that rewrites the rules. When you stop insisting life bow to your commands, it often kneels of its own accord. Release the panic of being overlooked, and your presence grows undeniable, a quiet force that draws eyes without effort. Quit chasing success from a hollow, desperate place, and the world begins to offer its gifts unbidden. Move in rhythm with life's pulse, instead of flailing against it, and the pieces fall into place with a grace that feels almost preordained. This isn't mere philosophy spun from thin air. It's etched into the very wiring of our minds and bodies. Neuroscience peels back the curtain. The more we claw for dominion over our surroundings, be it the people we encounter, the outcomes we chase, or the relentless chatter of our own thoughts, the more resistance we summon against ourselves. Studies lay it out plain. Desperation for love often drives it further away, a paradox of pushing too hard. Dread of failure plants the seeds for its arrival, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Gripping too fiercely at control drains the very strength we seek to wield. Cognitive psychology adds another layer. Our brains are architects of habit, building neural highways from the routes we travel most. React too often, and reactivity becomes your default, a groove worn deep by repetition. But here's the lifeline threaded through it all. Those highways can be rerouted. Mindfulness, intentional reframing, the deliberate choice to face discomfort rather than flee it. These are the tools that reshape the terrain, proven by science to shift the way we process the world. So take stock. Are you a puppet, jerked by every string life pulls, or are you the one holding the scissors, choosing where to cut? Are you sculpting your sight? Because once you realize that nothing beyond the borders of your being can dictate the climate of your soul, life unfurls as a wholly different landscape. A vast, open plain where you set the terms. The untouchable mind, how to be unshaken by anything. Picture this. You're wandering down the street, lost in the rhythm of your own thoughts, when a voice slices through the air. Someone calls you out, branding you lazy, dim, a speck of nothing in a vast world. Freeze the frame right there. What unfolds inside you in that fleeting heartbeat? For most, it's an avalanche. Defenses snap up like a shield, adrenaline floods the veins, the mind either lunges forward with a counterattack or recoils into a spiral of self-questioning. The words don't just hit, they lodge, replaying like a taunting echo, feeding a fire of anger, shame, or quiet despair that burns long after the moment passes. Now rewind the tape and paint a different picture. Nothing stirs. No spike in your pulse, no clench in your gut, just a soft, steady awareness that whispers that belongs to them, not me. This is the distilled core of what Jung illuminated, a truth that echoes through the Stoic halls of ancient Rome, the meditative silences of Zen monks, the quiet defiance of those who've walked through fire unscathed. Nothing beyond your own borders can shatter your peace unless you swing the door wide and beckon it inside. But why do we so often roll out the welcome mat for such intruders? It's because we're shackled to a fragile construct, a self pieced together from the approval of others, the scars of yesterday, the brittle shoulds we've scribbled into our personal rulebooks. An insult doesn't merely graze us, it feels like a sledgehammer swung at the fragile edifice we call me, threatening to topple the identity we've so carefully propped up. Jung gave this vulnerability a name, the shadow self. It's the underbelly of the psyche, a dark, sprawling cellar where we hoard the things we'd rather not see, our terror of being found wanting, our festering grudges, the raw, unprocessed pain we bury beneath layers of pretense or distraction. When someone lashes out, when their words or actions pierce us, they're not conjuring the hurt from thin air. They're brushing up against a wound that's already there, a nerve left exposed by our own neglect. If you're truly at ease within, their barbs are powerless. They slide off like water on glass, leaving no trace. Shout at a mountain and it stands unmoved. The sound ricochets, but the rock endures. So turn the lens inward and ask the hard questions. Why does it land? Does worthless burn because a shadow voice inside murmurs it might be true? A doubt you've never fully silenced? Does a friend's disregard spark a flare of fury or sorrow because you're still tethered to their gaze for your sense of self? Does a plan's collapse send you reeling because you've anchored your stability to a single, narrow vision of how life must be? The adversary isn't the world. It's the fractures you've yet to mend, the gaps in your foundation you've left unaddressed. True strength doesn't lie in muting the critics, sidestepping every hardship, or paving over life's jagged edges with a smooth, predictable veneer. It's in forging a mind that rises above it all, unbowed and unbroken. A mind that doesn't crane its neck for applause, doesn't buckle beneath the weight of adversity, doesn't plead with the universe to behave. And this isn't some distant, ethereal dream. It's rooted in the tangible mechanics of our neurology. Research lays it bare. Our emotional eruptions are habits, neural circuits carved deep by the repetition of response. Let every slight hook you, every setback jolt you, and those circuits harden into reflexes you can't shake without deliberate effort. But here's the golden thread woven through the science. You can redraw those lines. Mindfulness, sitting with the moment instead of fleeing it, reframing, choosing a new story over the old, worn script, exposure, facing the discomfort head-on rather than dodging it. These are the chisels that reshape your brain's landscape. Over time, with practice, the insults stop cutting, the failures lose their power to brand you, the uncertainty ahead sheds its cloak of fear. You're no longer a punching bag swung by life's fists. You're the fighter in the ring, dictating the pace. Not because the blows cease, but because you've built a resilience that renders them weightless. We're a peculiar lot. We swear we're locked in a cage match with the world around us, but in truth, we're shadowboxing our own reflections. Someone snaps at you, and the ache isn't their bite, it's the meaning you drape over it, the old bruise it presses against. Jung put it with devastating clarity. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. It's a truth we duck and weave to avoid. Nothing out there holds a blade unless we hand it one. We're addicted to tying our worth to shifting sands. Praise from this person, success in that venture, the promise of what's next. That's why we're puppets to every sidelong glance, every gust of chaos, every stumble in the road. But what if you burn those tethers to ash? Detachment isn't a descent into frost, it's an ascent to clarity. You're not your anger, your doubt, your fleeting joys. You're the vast, steady presence watching them drift by. Imagine a hurricane, winds shrieking, seas thrashing, lightning clawing the sky. Above it all, an endless, serene expanse. You're not the storm, you're the sky. So how do you plant your flag on this unshakable summit? It starts with a jolt of realization. You're not reacting to life's raw data. You're reacting to your mind's interpretation of it. A filter forged in the shadows you've yet to claim. Two people brush up against the same thorn. One laughs it off and keeps walking. The other nurses the prick for days, replaying it in a loop of resentment or regret. Same thorn, different tales. Jung's shadow looms large here. The unseen baggage we drag behind us. The fears and frailties we shove into the dark, hoping they'll stay buried. They don't. They pull the strings. Why does a slight burrow under your skin? It's grazing a sore spot you haven't healed. The remedy isn't suppression, it's confrontation. Shift the question from why did they do that to what's this waking up in me? Picture a chessboard. Most of us are pieces, shoved around by every move, reacting without thought. Step up. Be the player, poised and strategic, seeing 3 steps ahead. Higher still, be the watcher, perched above the board, tracing every pattern with a calm, unhurried eye. That's detachment, not a hollow shell, but a citadel of awareness. Here's the electric turn that flips the script. Stop reacting, and the world starts to orbit you. You don't chase value, it flows to you like a river finding its course. You don't wrestle with negativity, it withers in your shadow. You're no longer a spoke in the wheel, you're the hub it turns on. The key? Live with eyes wide open. Next time a spark ignites, someone's jab, a plan's ruin, a fleeting doubt, pause. Catch that breath before the ember flares into flame. Feel it rise, anger, hurt, whatever it is, but don't leap aboard. Observe it, cool and clinical, like a scientist peering through a lens. That thin slice of stillness? That's your stronghold. Practice it, sharpen it, and it becomes your second skin. The instant you quit swaying to the world's chaotic beat, you set your own tempo. Command your gaze, and you command your reality.